So, I know a lot of you trust my recommendations when it comes to fantasy books, but does my wife also trust my recommendations? So, we've now been married for 4.5 years, and since we got married, she's picked up quite a lot of books actually that I recommended, which is really nice of her. But today we're gonna discuss 6 of the books I recommended, which are all fantasy or sci-fi, and to see whether she thinks I am good at recommending books or not. So, how are you doing?
I'm a bit scared, but thanks.
Scared? You should be scared. So, the first book I recommended that she picked up a while ago, it's probably a couple of years now, was The Final Empire or the Mistborn trilogy, and you did read the whole trilogy, so that's probably a good sign. But yeah, most of you know, this is one of the series that actually got me into fantasy, and I always recommend this to people that are new to fantasy or want to get into modern fantasy, and these covers are so nice. But yeah, what do you think? Did you think that this was a good recommendation?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really liked sort of the character development and sort of the world. The magic system was quite cool as well. It kind of made me think that they could quite easily make this into a game. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. It's been a while now though.
What was your favorite book in the trilogy?
My favorite book, I think my favorite book was Hero of Ages.
It is a very, very solid conclusion, isn't it? And yeah, this better come to the big screen because, as Susanna said, you can so easily visualize the whole story when you read it. It's very atmospheric, and there's just something about Sanderson's very accessible writing style that just works so well. When I read this, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It's been more than 3 years though, so maybe if I reread it now, I wouldn't rate it as highly. But what star rating would you give this recommendation?
At the moment, I'm thinking 4, but I think it's just because it's so long ago, so...
I'll take a 4. And the next one is Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, and I'm really happy that you're still reading the series. You can tell them afterwards how far you come. But yeah, also one of the series that got me into fantasy. This 14 or 15 epic series I just love it so much. It's not for everyone. It's a series I think everyone that loves epic fantasy should at least give a try. And you decided to pick up The Eye of the World. And how far are you into the series now?
I am on book 14, so...
Whoa! She's my wife, guys.
Technically the last book. I'm almost halfway through book 14. So with this one, I think it's a bit of a stretch to argue that this is an actual recommendation. So I don't think you said, oh hey, you should read this 14 book series. I think you just talked about it a lot and referred to it a lot, and then I was like, oh, why don't I just read it?
And you did watch season 1 of the show first before you picked up book 1.
Yeah, and so I was like, actually, maybe I'll enjoy the show more if I just read the books, and by the time I finish the books, the show might have come out. Not true, because I'm nearly finished and the show hasn't come out yet.
Where is season 2? But yeah, I remember, I think Eye of the World is not the best book in the series. It's a pretty decent introduction to this world. It's not the best one for sure. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars when I read it back in the day. So what star rating would you give this recommendation? Let's just say the Wheel of Time series as a whole.
I would give, to me, probably a 4, because it's been quite fun for me.
Great. So the next recommendation is a book that I actually haven't read. But from what I've heard about this book, I thought she would probably love it because it is inspired by Russian folklore. You might know what it is. The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden, a series I've heard so many great things about, but I haven't read. And I also found this in a charity shop a year ago or so. So I just told Sana, maybe you'll enjoy it. I haven't read it. And she did decide to pick it up. And I haven't read it, so you can tell me. What did you think about it?
I like it. Yeah, I really like folklore though. Yeah, I really enjoyed this book. It's a trilogy, and I've read book 2 and I'm going to read book 3. So yeah, I quite like this book, especially sort of the dynamics of sort of the church in Russia and the priests in Russia, having sort of how they deal with sort of the dynamics of folklore and these beliefs of these different domovoids, I think they are called. So I really enjoyed this one. Well done on recommending a book you've never read. Should I rate?
Yeah.
4.
Alright, and the next one, we will keep it brief because we talked about this book on the channel before, and that is Paranisi by Susanna Clarke. I love this book. It's very short, it's very atmospheric, it's great on themes. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. What rating would you give it?
Paranisi, author's got a great name. I would give Paranisi... Yeah, I really like this book. I really enjoyed this book. And just because it was quite different to a lot of what other stuff that you like... I have not really read much that is in this style, and it kind of also gave me kind of this classical narrative feel to it at times, but with sort of modern twists. So yeah, I would really rate this one. I have recommended this to other people, so I would have to say that this is a 5 because I'm continuing the recommendation.
And what book are you currently reading?
I am reading another book by Susanna Clarke. I'm reading Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell.
And then I recommend one of my favorite books, which probably most of you guys don't even know because I almost never ever talk about it. But that is 1984 by George Orwell, an absolute classic when it comes to the dystopian genre. And yeah, what is there to say? So iconic when it comes to dystopian, and I think just Orwell seems to understand humans ever so well. So yeah, I absolutely love this book. If you want to read a classic and you maybe don't particularly enjoy classics, maybe give this one a go. I thought it was absolutely fascinating. What did you think about 1984?
I enjoyed it, but I didn't feel like it didn't catch me. Like, I think you raved so much about it when you first read it that I kind of expected more. And then it wasn't as great as I thought it would be. Maybe my headspace wasn't in the right place either. Yeah, I think it was okay. Like, I would say recommendation wise 3.5. But then again, I think if I reread it, I'd probably enjoy it more now. I feel like this is something you enjoy the older you get. Like, the more life you experience, the more you're like, oh, I see this, and can see how it's going in this direction, or this is not far off from some of what we experience today.
So the next recommendation is also a book I haven't read, and you haven't finished this book yet, but I'm sure you will one day. But I've heard so many great things about it. The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. I'm currently reading The Dandelion Dynasty. It is incredible, and people say that this is one of the best short story collections they read, a lot of booktubers. So this is definitely a book I'll read someday soon. But was this also a good recommendation? Because again, I haven't read this one.
I really enjoyed this. And the short stories that I have read, there's a lot of really fascinating, deep, thought-provoking themes that he touches on, and then in sort of ways that are really interesting. Like, I think most of these short stories you could write an essay about. You could probably write a whole dissertation about them. They're really, really interesting. This is like short stories I feel like anyone could read and they would take something away. Also recommended this to other people. I actually bought this as a gift for a friend. There you go. So this one gets a 5 as well.
So the last recommendation we have today is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. And we've actually met R.F. Kuang a year ago, which was really, really nice. And we both read the whole trilogy. So yeah, this one is signed, which I love. And I love these covers. I think The Poppy War is a really, really great recommendation if you're looking for an interesting spin on an underdog story, because Rin is an underdog, but she's also interesting, let's just say that. And it's quite grim, especially book 2 and 3 are horrendously grim, and just the setting, the Asian-inspired setting, I think is really, really good. But most of you probably have heard about this trilogy. What did you think about The Poppy War?
I really enjoyed it. So I think I really like, especially in fantasy, if it's kind of inspired either by folklore or history, find that really, really interesting, because then you're picking up knowledge. But also, if you already have that knowledge, it's sort of like a really good sort of reminder. You've already got kind of grips on the information, and so you really enjoy sort of the added stuff more. I quite liked Rin because she gave a really good, like, she was a good example of someone who has been in her situation, kind of thing. Like, you're not gonna be nice and sweet once you've gone through everything she's gone through and made the decisions she's made, been put in the positions that she was put in. She'd become callous, she'd become harsh, and she saw like what she hoped for things to be, and there was only one way of thinking that she could be in, because she'd been in this survival war destruction mode for so long. And it kind of makes sense. So I felt like I quite liked her, and I didn't like relate to her in a sense. I'm like, oh, I would do exactly that. In some ways I was like, I think that makes sense. You would do that if you're in that position. I would say this is a good recommendation. It is quite brutal. I don't think I felt that it was as brutal as you said it was going to be, probably because you built it up maybe to be something worse than it actually was. Yeah.
I think Rin, she is a great character, as you mentioned, but it's definitely the character you wouldn't want to meet in real life, because she is terrifying.
I would say recommendation wise, I would say a 4.
That is also pretty solid. So, but I think we do have 2 clear winners. So my wife's favorite recommendations, which maybe or may not be a big surprise considering she's an English literature student, are The Paper Menagerie and Piranesi. And yeah, I really need to read this book very, very soon now. I'm glad to see my wife. She does agree with my taste, in most cases at least. So
I think you should comment if you think he should start reading some of my recommendations, because that's where the work needs to be done, I think.
If you want me to read a bunch of classics, then maybe.
Build up his to be read list.
Thank you so much for watching, and as always, thank you so much to my patrons who support what I do here. I really appreciate it.